and welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Cannell. That's Tom Fernelli. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where there is, yes, a lot of buzz. Bud went on a secret mission. We can't wait to tell you about it. We will tell you about it in this show, but a little bit of time before we do that. We begin with some news from around college football, a lot of it originating from the SEC spring meetings. They come up near the end of this spring meetings rotation, and let's start at the top with Greg Sankey, because Greg Sankey is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful people in college sports. I don't know if I'm going to get a lot of pushback there. So his voice and his opinions on some of these big picture stuff, I do think are going to resonate and are going to matter. We also have his reaction to the Jaden Rashada lawsuit and some other thoughts in terms of, where the SEC is going to go here in the next few days, few weeks. DK, I'm going to start with you. When we got Greg Sankey, he's still trying to push against employment and any kind of employment status. He is still, very much towing the line in terms of where collectives are going to be in the future of college sports. And he is echoing the feedback from his coaches that are not in favor of any kind of roster caps. What were some of the things that stood out to you about what Sankey's had to say about some of these big news and big changes in college sports?
First, I was pretty surprised to learn he'd been to Washington, D.C. 5 times in the past year. I don't know if you guys saw that. He mentioned he had traveled up to D.C. quite a bit to try to, keep tabs on this, to see what Congress had going on, to try to campaign. I mean, there is a lot of lobbying behind the scenes taking place to try to save amateurism as we know it, so that schools do not have to pay them as employees. And it feels like with the settlement, they might have threaded the needle, but there's still going to be some pushback on that. I have a theory on the walk-ons, because you mentioned the roster limitations, that 85, scholarships could be the limit to the roster. And yet you saw Steve Sarkisian said we've had, between 105 and 130 players on our roster. Talked to Matt Rule a couple weeks ago, asked him about it. He said they had 130 at various times on their roster at different places he's been. I think the walk-ons are being used as a pawn in all of the PR battle that's taking place. I mean, think about the reaction from the coaches who are all up in arms, like, these are the essence of college football. And they're right. But I also think it's a way to try to tug on people's heartstrings to get them to say, you know what, we do need to save walk-ons. And in order to do that, we need to keep amateur status, because those are the players that love the game so much. They just want to dress out, just want to be a part of the program. So we need to save that. In order to do so, we need to keep them as amateurs. I think they're being used as a pawn in the big picture because the emotional attachment that coaches and even former players like myself have to walk-ons.
You can keep them, just pay them.
Right, exactly. And but they don't want to do that. I mean, that's not as much fun. And then you won't hear any complaining from the coaches about walk-ons. It'll be like, hey, I mean, and if we're going to this evolution of minor league football, why don't we just have a practice squad? I mean, they have essentially walk-ons who don't play on game day, who help you practice, because that's essentially the role they play, and they get a fraction of what the other players get. So, but those are collectively bargained as well, something that they want to avoid at all costs.
Forget the romanticism. The only reason coaches love walk-ons is because they don't count against the scholarship limit. So it allows them to have more players. Like every program loves being able to find a kid who doesn't need a scholarship, who they want on the team, who will then come in as a preferred walk-on or whatever. And then they have them on the team. They have depth at that position, and they still have a scholarship available to go get somebody else. Like, once you get the roster limits, if it's not, I don't think it'll be 85. I'm guessing it'll be closer to 100.
Right. That's one of the ways that I've seen some of the compromises that have been proposed are increasing that number. And then, like you mentioned, the formation of a practice squad. I mean, 85, and that's it, especially when we're asking the teams at the top of the sport to play more games than ever before. That's working in opposite, I think, of where we should be headed with this.
Maybe we could do like a luxury tax situation where you
Ooh.
can have 100, but you can go over 100, but you also have to pay a certain amount of money to your league, which then gets distributed to the other schools.
What's it called? The carpet, the umbrella? What's the
Oh, I don't care, but just
luxury something? I don't know.
yeah.
But
I think it's also about standardization, because there are some schools out there that they're filling their 85 scholarships, and they're also finding creative ways to really probably carry. I don't think anybody's carrying like 100 scholarship type players, but there are definitely some schools that are carrying, maybe 88, 90, 92 scholarship players. Just an example in my state, and I'm not saying Florida's doing this. I was able to find what their cost of in-state tuition is. I mean, it's $6,300, right? Like, you can tell a kid, hey, don't take a scholarship, come here as a transfer. We'll find a way to maybe make an NIL deal that works out. We have at least, $7,000 there, pocket a little bit of money, maybe a little bit on top of it, so you don't get to eat at the meal table. We'll take care of your meals as well. At some of these state schools, the tuition cost is so low that you're going to have teams that can carry like not high level players as non-scholarship players, but like they're not the guys 86 through 120 aren't all walk-on quality, right? Like they're able to stash some dudes because the collective is just paying really what the cost of attendance works out to be for the player. So I think maybe this part of this too is some standardization across the sport. Hey, like you only get X number of players that are like of the quality that could actually play for your school, and then that's it. I definitely think you see some coaches complaining about that.
I wonder what happens with like specialists, because you see that now, like kickers and punters and long snappers are typically all walk-ons at this, or preferred walk-ons, whatever nomenclature you want to use. I wonder how that will change the recruit. I mean, it's a very minor thing, but I wonder how that will change the recruiting and the way teams go about getting those guys if they are no longer allowed to just let them be walk-ons and they have to actually pay them. Like, will we see like a Tory Taylor getting a much higher, amount of money from one school than he would at another? Like, will there be bidding wars for kickers, guys who are reliable from 40 plus?
Didn't Alabama just win one? Getting
That's
the guy from Miami, Ohio?
Yeah.
That will be like, will that become like a very normal thing where it's like, if you're a very good kicker, you might get paid more than you would in the NFL, so you'd stick around for 4 or 5 years.
But were you surprised that Sankey's no fan of the Jaden Rashada lawsuit?
I did not see him comment on this. He
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, I missed it. I've been doing so much summer school, which, by the way, like and subscribe to the channel. We're dropping like 60 or 70 season preview episodes with our experts from the 24/7 Sports Network. So including some coming, really, really soon. I know everybody's here, waiting for that. So, no, I didn't see his comments on it. I saw some of his other comments that I was prepped to comment on. What did he say? He
said, I'm not a fan of lawsuits. He also said it's not the only lawsuit involving a coach over the last year, and it won't be the last. We have a legal system, and people have a right to pursue what they view as grievances, and that legal system serves that out. I mean, it's not all the way back to his predecessor, stop telling on each other, but it's like Greg Sankey's new, and it's like, stop suing each other. This is nothing's good. It's going to help the Southeastern Conference from doing this.
He does not like SEC on SEC crime. Like that's essentially what he's calling out, saying, I am not a fan of this. This, bad PR for Florida, bad PR for the Gators, for Navy. Any of it is bad PR for the league, especially when you consider it's a quarterback on Georgia. It has a lot of tentacles to it that we've discussed on here a lot. But anything that doesn't portray the SEC in a good light, he is not a fan of.
He's also not nearly as good at preventing it as his predecessor was. I mean, that was part of the genius of Mike Slive. He really shut that down and created, I guess, labor peace, if you will, for a while between his schools.
What else stood out to you, Bud? You mentioned that there were a few more things that Sankey had to say that stood out to you.
So Sankey was discussing how he doesn't think athletes want to become employees. And I was like, but his justification was, I've never had an athlete come up to me and say that I want to pay employees or pay taxes as an employee. And I'm like, have you ever had an athlete come up to you and say you want to pay taxes at 1099? Because I got to say, like, I would much prefer to pay taxes as an employee than as a 1099, guys. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but it's a lot. And the withholding thing obviously is something to deal with. But yeah, that's crazy.
It's actually a bigger pain in the ass to do it with 1099s because at least
Yes,
if you're an
that's what I'm
employee,
saying.
it gets taken out of your check on its own. Whereas with 1099s, like when I was a freelancer, it's like every 3 months I would have to do my taxes pretty much, and I would have to do them, not just go to TurboTax and input some numbers and everything would figure it out. Like I would have to sit down, get all the money that wasn't taken out of all my checks, and then send it to the government, and then I'd still have to pay more taxes at the end of the year. So you know what, Greg? I bet you these dudes would love to be employees compared to what they're doing right now.
I agree. Yeah.
For
So
for somebody who's so smart and well thought out, I thought it was a really careless quote that was easy to throw back in his face.
Oh, yeah.
Like from Sankey, I just thought it was one that was too easy to put back in his face and make fun of it and make them the butt of the joke, which typically he doesn't give you those type of quotes. He's pretty smart and well thought out. I thought it was a little careless and didn't make any sense whatsoever.
To look at some of the coaches who had some availability, I think there is some quiet confidence from Texas A&M head coach Mike Elko. He was like, the quote was like, we've got the base to have a really, really special season. And the way that is being framed leads me to believe that he knows there is work to be done and questions to be answered to hit whatever he is defining in his head as a really, really special season. But as he's sitting there and, Georgia's at the top of the league and Texas is going to jump in and jump right to the top of the pecking order. Alabama's going through a transition. I got the sense as all these different coaches are sitting there and look, it's talking season. It's May. It's the spring meetings. But I have known Mike Elko to not be full of fluff and choose his words carefully and have pretty sharp analysis of his own team and others. And so I don't know if there were any like coach quotes or coach opinions. Kalen DeBoer was one of the ones going hard on the walk-ons thing. There's a smattering of other takeaways, but I'm looking at Texas A&M and I'm going to give it a harder look and probably with a little bit more optimism just on vibes alone. Just hearing that Elko seems to believe that the foundation, the ground level that is okay. And that could be a scary thing for the rest of the SEC. Any other coach stuff?
It's very Brahmish in a way.
Accepting like what he understands.
Well, I think that they realize that this A&M schedule is fairly manageable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take a look at this thing, and it's you have a lot of talent at some premium positions. So you did a nice job overall in the transfer portal. And I mean, like Notre Dame at home. Like if I want to play Notre Dame, I want to play them game one. I think right. In the heat, let the line defensive ends rip on them. Hopefully Riley Leonard's healthy. I'd like to see if he is, if I'm Elko. McNeese, Florida, Bowling Green, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi State, LSU, South Carolina, Auburn, Texas. No Georgia, no Ole Miss, no Bama, no Tennessee. I mean, those are probably four of the top six teams. Not probably, definitely four of the top six teams in the SEC that they do not have to play. Louisville last year was a team that we circled and said, you have a real opportunity. You need to cash it in now. Sometimes your easy schedule you're going to get is in that year one. And you think about who this A&M team will lose after this season, there is a real chance that this A&M team is better than Elko's year two team. So this is probably an important year for Elko to cash in.
Starved Rock 314 in the chat says the SEC gave A&M a cupcake schedule as an apology for annexing Texas. Do we want to just go with that and say that's exactly what happened?
Chip knows my bold prediction for the season coming up is they go 10-2 and make the playoffs. So I'm all on the Mike Elko train.
That's right, Danny. I should have given you credit for that. That's right.
Absolutely.
Eric says, "Is that Danny or Marshall Mathers?" I think you've gotten a lot of compliments, especially with the beards growing in nicely. A lot of people didn't think that you had that dog in you, to really follow through with it. I think that.
So does it count? Is that a check?
No.
Check the box.
No, we still gotta go. No, not until Bo Nix wins a game.
All right. One other thing.
Nothing like a beard in that Florida summer heat.
Brutal.
What was it? Only Beards? We're gonna start a new private website. All right. So before we hit the break and come back with some conversation that I know some of you watching along live with us have been, very excited to get to. Steve Sarkisian, he was addressing the injury report potential in the SEC. He comes out and he's like, hey, look, make it just like the NFL. If you were lying about your injury report, fine them. I love this. He said, we all like our money too. If you just start finding these head coaches, but I have long believed you to have your finger on the pulse of availability better than anyone else that I know. Do you think that we see coaches in the best conferences of college football moving forward with injury reports that can be trusted?
I think as these leagues get more in bed and the broadcast, corporations like ours get more in bed with the gambling companies, they will not be cool with surprise, unavailability from superstars. So yeah, I think this will be coming in relatively short order.
Yep.
And Big Ten's already been doing it. So
thank goodness too. You know how many meetings I sat through and the coaches wouldn't tell you, even the broadcast crew, which is like an insult to the profession, but they'd be like, then you have the sideline reporter. When can you tell us? Well, not until, 2 minutes before kickoff, because they were worried you were going to give the information. I think the bigger concern is think about the nefarious characters like Bud Elliott, who are out there doing the legwork, trying to find out that information. I mean, that does make you susceptible to payments under the table, to people trying to give out information, where if everybody's forthcoming and they just tell you, then you don't have to worry as much about that taking place. So I think it's incredibly smart. I think it would be getting ahead of potential issues that crop up, and I would be so welcome to see it. And I think Sark is right. If people are still trying to hide it, just like the NFL, then find programs for trying to be deceitful about their injury information, like putting Tom Brady on every single week, his knee issue or whatever it was the Patriots did. I'd say fine them. I think the transparency would be a great thing for everybody involved.
All right. It's here. We finally did it. So coming up on the other side, Bud went on a super special secret mission, and he got his hands on something that y'all want to know a lot about. So the EA Sports College Football 25 gameplay review with Bud Elliott. We'll get into all that and more next.
My primary function is to create a balance and avoid a war.
There's some new players in town, and they brought the plague.
Why are you back?
Because I missed you.
When I act, I do so with purpose.
You got my attention. You don't want that. What happened to Kingston?
Oh my God. All right. Listen, I thank those of you in the tailgate who had some patience, because we had some meltdowns in there.
Hey, you know what? I thank y'all who didn't have patience too, because our advertisers, they don't really care if you're patient or impatient as long as you watch. So,
okay, so Bud, before we get into some of the details, and we will take some questions from the tailgate, set the scene here, because I saw a couple of photos that looks like it was a pretty cool experience over there at EA in Orlando. Again, before we get into the game, sort of how did this all come together?
Yeah, so I live here in Orlando, which is where EA is located. I've been to their studios a good number of times before, but I've never been to a game release. And I've been there a lot of times. Like, man, we really want to do the college football game, just couldn't do it. And this was pretty neat. So it was myself, Andy Staples, Chris Panini, Matt Brown, a couple of Robbie Calland, obviously.
Robbie Calland in the house. Yeah.
And a couple other guys, a lot of dudes who cover video games as well on their channels, and
a lot of nerds.
And I feel like we are lagging on YouTube as far as best practice compared to some of those dudes. Like they take the YouTube bit pretty serious. It was cool. So like they had all our lockers set up with our where we went to school, and did like a 2-hour presentation. I think the biggest thing that I took away from this is that this is not like Madden reskinned. They didn't pull a couple guys off other video game teams from other sports. Like they didn't pull a guy off the NBA game or college basketball or Madden or whatever. Like, hey, make a college football game. The dudes making this game are like absolute college football sicko nerds. Okay, the stuff that they thought to put in here is It's just straight doves. It's awesome. They wanted to operate with the mantra that like every team is somebody's favorite team, and they really gave it the full treatment. So it like they got every single fight song. They had incredible attention to detail, with elements like what song is played after certain things happen at certain stadiums and for certain things. Are there certain traditions that can only be unlocked, with certain happenings, right? Maybe we only play this version of this song against a certain opponent, right? We only go with this stripe out formation in our stands as far as fans organizing for this game or that game, whether it's like the Tennessee checkerboard or how Boise does like the triple stripe thing. And what I really got was I felt like at least from the presentations, is that the schools were really in on this. Nice. Once they were allowed to be, every school was like, oh man, awesome. Like they were giving Clemson props for taking like, I don't know, I think it was like 7,000 different photos of their stadium or something like crazy, but they labeled all of them like the exact reference point where each one is. They went and did stadium mapping for pretty much all of the stadiums. They, went to Vancouver and built like a big studio. Actually, this was during COVID to show you how long this game has been in the works. Like building like a literal hill for Clemson to mocap running down. Right? They built a horse for Renegade and Osceola at Florida State. I just think if you're, regardless of what team you're playing with, I think they did a great job of nailing your traditions, like knowing what to ask for, knowing what to look for. That was pretty cool. As far as you got to differentiate it from Madden, and both in terms of like details, but also gameplay, they really did. So I'm super fired up to play it, and actually did get to play it. So
okay, that's the next part. What's you have you've made some cross comments about gamers on this Cover 3 podcast before.
Yeah,
but
that is true.
But you at a time you liked having the sticks in your hand, so getting to play it. What'd you think of the gameplay?
All right, so it's really different than Madden. Okay, it's, I would say, like higher variance, crazier, but that does kind of reflect what you see in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have a much less standardized game compared to our NFL counterparts, and I think it reflects that. I love the run game, by the way. Like the run game makes sense. Their zone blocking is different than their man blocking. If you don't take the appropriate track when you're running zone, you're probably not going to have a successful play. Like you actually have to, much like you got to throw a pass on time, you need to hit your track on time. And if you hit it, you can actually run the ball really effectively. But there is a more strategic element of the run game, whereas 10 years ago when we had this, it didn't feel like that. So like that was something I noticed immediately. I also like the option game. Now, instead of a handoff button, you press it to pull, which is, I think, better. And it works better. In the old one, remember how you had to like mash it, hand it off, and it wouldn't always work? This worked. So
for the dive, you had to mash it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I'm going to be pulling like on accident for at least the first 4 or 5 hours I'm playing that game.
Just from habit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it still have your primary and secondary reads marked, or do you have to pick that out?
They are colored. Now this is cool. So they really wanted to, and I'm glad they did this because I think it adds some more fun elements to the game. But they added things that really reflect like where you are in your developmental cycle as a player. So you may think you're some hotshot 5-star freshman, but your experience level and your maturity level, it really does matter, especially where you're playing, right? If I'm going and I'm playing in Death Valley at night, I might be a 5-star freshman. I might have had a pretty nice September, but come October, Death Valley at night, you know what? If I'm playing, especially on like Dynasty mode, I may not have all of the passing options available to me, right? I may not have 100% of that playbook available. All my routes might be like super shaky, or some might not appear actually, right? And there's definitely like the ability to be rattled and having to overcome that, which is, there's more here. They always had like you're tired, right? Fatigue. All video games have that. There's more of that now, right? But it's also like a mental fatigue type thing, which I think matters, and I think it goes to your experience. Because you do see college guys melt down in a way that that pro players for the most part don't. But it's not in like a cheesy way, right? Like it's not like, okay, this is not fun because I can't do anything now. But it was that part of it stood out as something like, yeah, that actually, in the effort to reflect what actually happens in college games, that was pretty cool. Let me see comments from the chat. No, read option is not a cheat code, but it felt much better than it used to be. I've known the guy who does playbooks there for a long time, and just from previous trips over there, and they really do feel like they have 134 different ones in there, which is pretty wild. Like, wow. They are adding in the veer and shoot stuff, and talked about how that was a real challenge, to get and to get the game logic to actually understand the nuance and what makes that system work as far as the crazy wide splits, which actually, if you're a gamer and you want to know about that, we actually did a separate video about that on our channel one time as a pullout. But that was neat. And also, they're like, we didn't really like how passing did not reflect sort of the three-dimensional element that is actually on a real field, where the importance of layering the ball over the top, of like an over one guy in front of another actually matters. And so that's a quarterback skill set, like as Danny can tell you. It's not all just, hey, here's a laser, here's a laser, here's a laser. That was something they really emphasized as well. I thought was pretty cool. I'm gonna take a sip now. Ask me some questions.
Yeah.
Do you know if linebackers still have better hands than the wide receivers?
Okay, no. So I was trying to just like see like how late can you throw a ball, right? And I was playing on All-American, and I think one on Heisman. They don't pick it off every single time, which I thought was good. I was like, yeah, we see that in college. Like college, there's a lot of like, oh my God, no. And then it's like, okay, well, the guy actually dropped the pick. That I don't think the hands of the defenders in this game are
a
as
middle
good.
linebacker who can jump 10 feet in the air with amazing
right.
hands.
Yeah. So I thought that was, I mean, the gameplay is a hell of a lot better than it was if you're somebody who still has your old system and has still been running back the game from a decade ago.
Okay. Danny or Tom, before we get some chat questions, anything else that stands out to you?
Well, I was curious, how do they incorporate NIL, if at all?
So they did. Now you got to remember, most of this game was developed before like the Tennessee decision came out, and before all these subsequent court decisions and settlements and rulings. But there is an NIL element in there. It's basically like your brand exposure rating. if because of course NIL is all about brand exposure. That kind of makes sense in terms of, hey, what are schools going to be cool with allowing, like signing up for? They're probably not going to be cool with like, all right, here's this guy's salary and this guy's salary, even though that we know that's really how it works. The schools still want to kind of keep that image of these guys aren't just paid by their collectives like employees. But it does matter for sure. There are certain players where NIL, especially in Dynasty and also in Road to Glory, it matters a whole lot for you. It can also get you in trouble. Like in Road to Glory, if you spend all of your time working out and doing NIL and you don't do any academic work, then you actually do run the risk of becoming academically ineligible.
What?
Yes. Yeah. So you got to balance your time. They brought in coaches and players to talk about things like that. But I was pretty impressed with that part of it relative to what it could be at the time that it was being developed. We'll have to see how it evolves in next year's game based on subsequent court decisions and settlements and whatnot. So I'm excited about that. Dynasty is pretty cool. Like you can tell the level of like detail and just how big of college ball nerds these guys are with like the people they consulted with and like just the little things about like college football. They put blue chip ratio in there, which is pretty cool. I was like, okay, yeah. I was like, whoa, all right, that's awesome. Dynasty looks like it's a whole lot of fun. I think it's going to be harder to win a natty with like Ohio by year 3. You know what I mean? Because of the level of prospect that a school like that can get. If you're going to do something that wild, I think it's harder to do so. and it's going to take longer, which actually makes it more of an accomplishment, right? It's like, hey, look, I played till season 14 or whatever, and I was finally able to slowly upgrade the level of prospect that my school can sign, and that's something I'm looking forward to playing with quite a bit. I was never a big Road to Glory guy, I never played it on the old one. I didn't like it. I didn't really care about it. I played Dynasty a lot. So
can you edit conferences?
You can edit conferences. Yes, you can edit.
So I can
conferences.
put Florida State in the Big Ten.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
That actually, I think, was the example that was shown of how you can edit conferences. So, there again, these guys are pretty big college ball nerds over there, and I think that's what we want. We just want the Madden team to kind of half-ass make a college game. You could bring back the Big East if you wanted to. You can edit future schedules. You could not do the create a player thing and
throw them in there and recruit the hell out of them and then get them on your squad.
Well, that, and you can't do, like, there are certain guys who have not opted into the game that you can't do. So that's obviously.
So I can't put Arch Manning in the game.
Correct.
And have him transfer.
You cannot create Arch Manning.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see.
All right.
So from what you've seen or what you saw or were told, like, how intensive is the recruiting?
Yeah,
because I remember that was one thing that for me kind of always in dynasty mode annoyed me a little bit. It was like the recruiting took up too much time, whereas I just kind of wanted to get back to playing the game. So do you have any idea of what that's going to look like in the new version?
I think it's still going to be pretty intensive, man. Honestly, okay. Granted, I guess you could just sim it and deal with what you got, but you may not get quite as good of players.
The Lincoln Riley model.
You said it, not me. I'm taking enough USC heat recently. With your coach tracks, you can choose to be either a tactician, recruiter, or like motivator developer. And you have to decide, like, do I want my staff to have good balance in these areas, or do I want to just go all in on like recruiting only, or tactician only, or whatever. And that is, you can't be the best at all things, at least not until way, way deep in the dynasty setting, which is, again, like, I don't know, if I'm buying a game, I'd like to be able to feel like there are still parts to unlock later on, right? As opposed to just, I beat it in 4 seasons.
In the old game, when you would allocate your points, it felt like your NIL budget. There was a way. I mean, there was one era of the game where you actually had to specifically sell certain points. But in NCAA 14, if I remember correctly, you just had points. You had to allocate them to each different recruit. And that sure felt like whether it's resources, whether it's actual investment, that sort of felt a little bit like the modern recruiting. Does it check out kind of similar now?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different areas that certain recruits are going to care about. They put pipelines in there to where it makes sense. Like, if I'm USC, I may not be able to pull quite as many kids from Florida. They did a lot of research into what types of player in terms of position and skill level come from certain areas in the country. So maybe more, disproportionately more good defensive linemen from the Carolinas than you might think, right? Maybe a lot of really good DBs from the state of Florida, maybe some more good linemen from the Midwest, maybe some California quarterbacks, things like that, which will impact how you build your dynasty, which is, solid.
Did they still have the coaching carousel?
I didn't ask about that, but like, you can definitely get fired, obviously.
So I'm like when 14 was the last year was out. It's like, you'd have one good year at Miami of Ohio, and then all of a sudden, like, Florida State's offering you their job, and it was just like, it's like that was always kind of weird to me.
I don't think that I really think that they made an effort to make it more realistic. They also worked with some of the guys who continued to like evolve and make the game. Like, we had all these communities. Like, some of those guys ended up getting hired on the team, which is, again, trying to reach out to show like the people that actually played the game and enjoy the game and like the sport are making this, because they didn't want to make it, just a Madden reskin. I've got like 3 pages of notes double-sided, so I took a lot.
All right, what about let's do some funny ones. Did they get the rights to Enter Sandman?
They should get
think
Chip
so.
to perform it if they did.
There was a big I was taking notes fast, but there were a lot of songs that they did try to license. There were a couple they didn't
Jump
get. So
around.
Well, yeah, that was the other one. Mr.
Yeah.
Brightside at Michigan, Jump Around at Wisconsin, Jump Around being after the third quarter. That seems to line up with the when this happens,
Right.
then this happens. And I imagine House of Pain is not overly litigious.
Based
So-
on how Lars Ulrich and Metallica responded to Napster back in the day, I'm gonna bet they don't have the rights to enter Sandman for
They
that.
they show them all jumping, but then they,
Yeah.
then
So we
maybe-
just need to get Chip in there going doom 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 doom.
Hey, listen, that will hold up in court. Okay, that will hold up in court that it is not Enter Sandman. So
The one, so he was talking pretty fast. They did get, I think they got Zombie Nation, but did not get Sandstorm, or they got Sandstorm, but did not get Zombie Nation. I was writing really fast at that time. I don't know if they got Neck. I didn't ask about that one. The thing is, if you got Neck, do you get the?
Do you get the whole like every
the
single
version of
lyric in
Neck
there?
that-
Because we're gonna have to put that
Explicit.
MA rating on the game.
Yeah. Parental advisory on the most anticipated sports video game launch in 20 years. All right.
They have the new lighting system that a lot of stadiums have when they turn out the lights. You know, the
Like
LED lights
red
go out
lights.
and they turn. They had
Yeah.
that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. How does gameplay and presentation feel to you as someone who isn't an everyday player or gamer?
If you are somebody like who kept playing the old game, it just is so much more smooth and more intuitive than it used to be. I think the run game part is pretty big. I like the ability to switch to like the guy nearest the ball to be able to like make more user catches and whatnot, which is nice. You know, to be able to flip the action stick there. That's pretty solid. I have played like some Madden, so you know, like not a ton, but a couple of my buddies have it, so I've played with them there on that. Granted, like guys, technology's come a long way in 10 years. So if it didn't feel better, I think we'd have a lot of complaints. But I think they cashed it in pretty good. Sorry, I did not do a lot of Road to Glory.
Jackson, how is the passing component of RPOs?
It's pretty good, man. It's like you would think it is, right? You're not really getting four options that you can read out, right? You're really kind of it's give, throw, or if you can pull it down and run with it, obviously.
They
I also like
it like it would be for a true freshman who's out
Yeah.
there just running RPOs.
Yeah.
Like when Avery Johnson
Oh.
took the field for Kansas State as a true freshman, it is like that playbook that they hemmed down for him to go out and be
Mhm.
effective.
Another thing I noticed is that Danny, you'll like this. The drop backs are more realistic. So nobody sprints to the back of their drop and stands there for 5 seconds. Like you actually drop back on a pass like you would drop back, which is, hurry, but not frantic on your drop, which makes a little more sense so that you are kind of more in concert with the offensive lineman in the pass protection, which I liked. All right, if you're a real nerd, here's some of the stuff I think will get you. No X factors, no guarantees, special mental abilities, special physical abilities. Guys who definitely have the ability, as we talked about, like play a little bit better relative to some other dudes if they're on the road, because again, handling the crowd, handling the pressure situations. You will see this in kicking, by the way, for sure.
Mhm.
Like if you get some MAC kicker who's a freshman going to Alabama, that is going to be tough. I did not like the new kicking controls at first, and then because I shanked like 2 punts and just like missed an extra point. But
golf course flashbacks while you're out there. Just
after about 3 games, I got it. So, yeah, dude, seriously, that was pretty solid. Is the kneel down in the playbook for Miami? That's awesome. Good question there. So yeah, no X factors, no guarantees on those, which I think is kind of nice. Jackson, I did punt. Yeah, I don't know. Should I not punt?
No, punting is winning. Okay,
Yeah,
play field
exactly.
position. Let's go.
Dude, Michigan State. I was Utah. Michigan State was killing me on Heisman. So
Sparty take the season over. Sparty's
Yeah.
good.
Childs is pretty good in this game.
Ooh.
Can Clemson use the
By the way,
transfer portal?
North Carolina is way better than I thought they'd be. I was scrolling through the menu. What? That's okay. So Jordan Mafia is
Yeah, that checks out. It's a great in a video game. Great
yes.
in theory. Great before mid-October.
Yeah, exactly.
Danny, Tom, anything else or Tommy or Bud?
I know that they have. I mean, we've heard about it. They've got like multiple broadcast options. Like they're doing it. Like you've got the big game where you're going to have Fowler and Herbie, and they have other broadcasts.
Yep.
So like, if I'm playing as Toledo, what am I going to be getting as calling my games? Who's calling the games?
Probably not Herbie and Fowler, unless you take Toledo to the playoff. I guess.
Which I will.
Fowler actually was there. We talked to him for a little bit. He said he recorded 115 hours of audio. And I'm like, oh my God, this is
I believe it.
That's a lot of audio, man.
That's like 62-hour sessions probably over the course of a year.
Yeah, that's fair.
Fowler asking, why do you need me to record the line in Virginia Tech are SEC champions? What's going on there?
Weather matters too. Like legitimately.
Big Ten.
Yeah. Yes. Right. So if you are in like a big time snow game or a big time rain game, as we know, rain leads to more points. Defenders slip down a little more. It's easier to kind of understand how to function your body on a wet field if you know where you're going, as opposed to being reactive. So that was something I liked. Like, cool, because it used to be, in the rain, you could still bomb it a bunch, no problem, and that's changed as well.
Brian
I know we
Kelly
got
is
probably
gonna suck
I
at
was
this
gonna
game.
say, yeah, it's right, hanging right there. We call this the Brian Kelly patch that we put in the game
Yes.
to be able to make it so you can't throw it 45 times in a hurricane. What's the scoreboard look like? That's a question we're getting in the tailgate a lot. I guess that means the score bug as well.
It just looks.
Does it look like
I didn't
ESPN's?
I didn't know it's not the ESPN one, as far as I know. I mean, I'm trying to remember what it looked like. I don't think it had branding on there.
Okay. And are all the announcing teams basically from ESPN?
No, Pollock's in there.
Oh, former ESPN.
Yes,
Mhm.
former ESPN.
Got it.
Is he a
Yeah.
studio analyst or is he calling games?
I believe he's calling games. It's Kevin. What's his name? Is a studio analyst.
Connors.
Gandhi?
No,
Kevin Connors?
Kevin Connors.
I think Kevin Connor. Yeah. Again, I mean, like they went through a lot of stuff in the presentation, and I took as many notes as I could. I did want to get to playing the game, which was obviously presentation was cool. Actually playing the game.
Yeah, stop talking, nerds. I want to play.
Yeah, we appreciate you going and looking all that up. The game's going to be coming out in July. We are going to have more Cover 3 content now, both on the YouTube channel. Make sure you go and subscribe, and then of course, on the podcast. If you think we're not going to be talking about this as we're playing it, as it's coming out, then you just don't listen to Cover 3 podcast in July. We'll do absolutely anything. No, seriously, like, it's going to be a huge deal for fans, and we're very, very excited about it. Bud, thank you for the info. Coming up on the
no, if we have more questions for the chat, I don't mind taking them a little bit. Do we have more stuff to get to?
Let's see. I mean,
There's one guy who keeps asking if you were able to use Team Builder or get any info on it.
I was not able to use Team Builder. They only let us play the Play Now mode on that because Robbie Calland, I did not go on the Madden day, right? I went on the college football day because I had to work for a living, and like I don't know these college football writers going to play the Madden day. I was like, you guys are going? Like, yeah, like damn, like I'm working, bro. But I guess Robbie messed it up somehow in the demo mode by going into the non-play now. So we were walking back in lunch, like, remember, it is play now mode only during the demo.
That's my Robbie.
So yeah, I was like, that's great.
And then is it no high school in Road to Glory? You just go ahead and start out as a recruit? Yeah.
That's from what I had in my notes. Yeah.
In 2005, when I was creating Chip Patterson from Broughton High School, like I guess that was fine, but as an adult, I don't need to play the high school games to try to go win the state title. I'm fine on that. All right. Coming up on the other side, a few leftover questions from the big old bag of mail, including an idea for spring football. We'll get into that and more next.
Women have power. Use it.
You need to send a message. I never should have sent a boy to do a woman's job.
The Chi. New episodes now streaming. Visit ParamountPlus.com/The Chi to get 50% off.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. Got a few questions that have been bouncing around the big old bag of mail for several weeks, and I want to make sure that that those of you get your voices heard. If you go and leave us a 5-star review and put your question in that review, we will tackle it in a future mailbag episode. This one comes from username Just Want Football. Left in April. Love the pod for the mailbag. On Monday's show, you discussed how little attention the UFL is getting. What do you think would happen if each UFL team started associating itself with a major college football program, signed all alumni from that school, whether they're recent players who didn't make the NFL or maybe even older greats whose NFL days might be at or near an end? Have a mascot that doesn't copy, but maybe complements the schools. Same or similar color schemes, not necessarily the same city or even state, but based in a spot with big alumni presence. I, for one, would enjoy a product where I could watch a bunch of former Sooners from the last 10 years play. Thoughts?
How many games have you guys watched UFL?
None.
Zero.
And we're pretty diehard football
I bet
people.
a couple of them, but I just checked the betting account afterwards to see if I won or lost. I didn't actually sweat it.
Where was the edge? Where was
just a friend who had great numbers with.
Somebody
you know
else
what I
who's
would
running
watch if-
UFL
Yeah.
numbers gave Bud the hot tip.
If I wanted to watch like a football game featuring a bunch of former Oklahoma Sooners, I would just watch an NFL game.
I
There's a
think
lot
the
of
more
former
likely
Sooners in this.
tie-in would be for the Falcons or Titans in the South to be connected with the minor league team, kind of like baseball has, where you're getting called up and there's back and forth and the rosters are more interchangeable and you're getting sent up, sent down. I think that'd be something I'd be more likely to watch. Or you had, I saw with the news yesterday, the NFLPA, they're trying to push back the start of OTAs. And Orlovsky said something I saw. He was like, that could be at the detriment of players' development. He's like, if you're a young quarterback, you need to go play in the UFL. That'd be a way to do it, but there's no way the NFL teams would risk their players to the UFL, tackle football without some sort of protection in return. But I do think that would be the way. I don't know. I mean, we've seen this so many different startups over the past 40 years to try to make inroads. And it's just, I think it's unrealistic. I think they should just approach it like they're minor league baseball. Like no one ever complains about minor league baseball ratings. It is what it is. It's minor league football. Like that should be okay. I don't think we should try to find any solution for how it should rate, better. It is what it is.
Yeah, like the only difference is that major networks are investing in these leagues because they think, football. Everybody watches football, and there's an unending, dying kind of craving for football in this country. But I think we overestimate how much of that is just related to the NFL and college. I think that come springtime, the evidence dictates that Americans love football. They also love other sports, and they're not going to give up those other sports to watch more football, especially if it's not of the quality of what they typically prefer in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, college has a 140-year head start on everybody. The NFL has like a 70-year, 80-year, however long the NFL has been around, head start. It's hard to just make up for all those years of lost time by creating a new franchise in a subpar league. If this had really had big value, I think the schools would be like, you know what? Eligibility requirements are kind of dumb. Let's allow these guys to stay for a 7th, 8th, 9th year. Why would you give up your position in a valuable asset to some local team against which you would compete? That would be silly. Like if these teams really think these guys that aren't good enough for the NFL had serious value, I bet you they would kind of work with players to stop opposing these eligibility requirements.
The Falcons as an expansion team were created like the red and black was right there for them. Wasn't that it part of the intention? You know, because I'm thinking about the brand association. I'm thinking about Barton's old story about LSU and the Louisiana State High School Championships, where everybody's purple and gold or everybody's Tigers. I think about, is it Grayson that has the big G, but it's green and yellow, but it's still it's a big G, and all the other red and black that's there. I don't think that the question is off in terms of just trying to play to that college fandom and the idea that you would go heavy on it. We just haven't seen the Birmingham Stallions decide as an organization, hey, we are only going to get Alabama and Auburn players. And we're just going to that is going to be our selling point. It seems right now that there's more Alabama and Auburn players probably who are in the NFL, right? And and if they're not in the NFL, I don't know how many of them percentage wise are going to be in the UFL where you could load a roster like that. I don't hate the idea, especially again, stemming from what we've seen with the college, high school, pro ranks that have happened elsewhere across the country. All right.
Who's got lawn people going?
Who's got
Not me?
Maybe?
I just muted.
Danny's hedges are being trimmed right now.
Yeah, but not his beard.
Not his beard.
Manscaped. No, sorry.
All right.
They don't sponsor us, right? Okay.
No, they should though.
They should, yeah.
We should get them to sponsor Danny's beard.
Oh, when he finally shaves it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a live episode.
We should have Bo Nix come on the show to announce the partnership.
Oh my!
If it lasts that long,
energy, bro.
Bo Nix and Danny Cannell at the barber shop, sitting down, talking football as Danny finally gets his beard shaved after Bo Nix's first win. I kind of think it's a good idea.
I would do numbies.
I did not see any shots, nor did I ask about like team football only facilities. So like, I don't know if they had like the Clemson slide or anything like that. I didn't get to see any renderings of what like official visit looks like if they have them.
Did they tease any Easter eggs like, hey, you guys have to play to see a couple of the hidden gems that are going to be in there? Did they tease anything like that?
They teased like certain celebrations and things you can unlock.
Like this one? It's probably like that's a layup.
I was thinking like lifting the leg to simulate the dog in the egg bowl, but I don't know. Again, like I don't know if the schools are going to play nice with that. My thought was probably like goalposts coming down. You know, maybe there are certain thresholds for your team. Like if you have not beaten, this level of a rival in X number of years or something like that, then you tear the goalpost down. I assume they have everybody rush the field at Clemson every time because like that's a cool, unique nuance thing, but I didn't actually get to see that.
A couple of people asked horns down.
Horns down.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get to see horns down, but I'm hoping that's in there.
Gotta be.
I don't think they were able to show true attendance at Hard Rock Stadium, and I got asked in there.
What if Arch Manning is out because horns down is in? He takes such great offense. He's like, I'm not going to be a part of this.
If an SEC fan base storms the field, you get like a disappointed looking Greg Sankey just shaking his head.
Yeah, the fine comes like there's a little news blurb about the fine that comes out, and 9 national reporters all tweet the news at the same time on your little social screen.
I do. This is another one from Tika Frog. So the 2 stadiums that are under construction are not. They're not in there as far as like
Vandy and Northwestern.
Well, sorry, no. So Vandy,
Florida State too.
Mm-hmm. So Vandy and Florida State will be with the artist renderings, I believe. With Northwestern, you'll be playing in the stadium, not on the practice field thing that they're actually going to be playing on this year. And I think Kansas is in the same boat because like Kansas is not playing at their home stadium this year, really at all, right? They're playing a couple at this local field, which holds
it's the MLS stadium, so it's not like a total,
I shouldn't say a local field, there's bleachers and stuff.
Yes, there's bleachers, there's amenities, they're
also playing.
They got bathrooms.
Like
when Georgia wins the national championship, can Kentucky and Mississippi State fans chant SEC in the game?
I think we may be able to add that in there. Yeah.
I mean, that's what your guy said, right, Danny? Is he in the game? Is he gonna be out there talking about? He was like, I may be a Florida fan, but man, I'm happy for Georgia today. Yeah. Awesome stuff. But Bud, we appreciate you bringing back what you found from that. And thank you to EA Sports, for hosting Bud and giving the Cover 3 podcast a look at the highly anticipated EA Sports College Football 25 release. And you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Tom Fornelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.